Fear is forever. Morgana's heels skittered to a stop upon rounding the corner and finding a rough-looking man with a rifle clutched to his chest before the door. He wore Kevlar armor imbued with eldritch runes, which glowed menacingly in the little hallway behind the stage in the Orpheum Theatre. "Come on, Bug, nothing to be worried about," said Solstice with a wink, striding past her in a silvery black party dress caressing his shoulder. "Hey Stefan, thanks for protecting us." "My pleasure, Miss Charmer," said Stefan with a nod as he opened the door for her sister. Morgana entered the room right on her sister's heels, taking care not to make eye contact with the guard, to be greeted by their mother Monique. She was chatting on a phone with one hand, and sipping from a glass of champagne with the other. Leather couches surrounded a table covered in caviar, petite truffle sandwiches and other exquisite fare. Through a door she saw her father Victor also speaking on his phone but no drink in his hand. "I'm too big to be a bug anymore," said Morgana, standing tall so her sister would remember her newly acquired height. Yeah, sure," said Solstice, distracted as she stared at their father through the doorway. "You'll always be Bug to me no matter how big you get." Morgana glanced around, confused by the lack of mirrors and chairs she was expecting. "I thought this was a dressing room." "It usually is. When you give as much as Vic, you can ask for perks. They'll turn it back into a dressing room after tonight." Solstice glanced back then squinted. "Come here, Bug." Morgana approached. She was almost as tall as her sister, who was 4 years her senior, and less than a year from taking her Merlin trials. Solstice licked her finger and smoothed away a strand of blonde hair that had escaped Morgana's black headband. "There. All better, Bug." "Thanks, Sol." She glanced to her mother, still on the phone. "At least someone's looking out for me." A strange look passed across her sister's face, but it was brief and Morgana didn't pass its meaning. Her big sister, and eldest of the family, stared into the room where her father was working. "It's weird with them being in the same room after the divorce," said Morgana, fidgeting with the way the black dress fit around her hips. "Only a year ago, it would have hung down loosely." "Business is business," said Solstice, apparently trying to eavesdrop on their father. A moment later, Ares came bursting into the room with the twins on his heels. He'd only just passed Morgana in height, and his chest was starting to fill out and his shoulders square. Not yet a man but no longer a boy. "Will you two leave me alone?" an exasperated Ares told the twins, who had found wands used as props for the plays and were slapping and poking him in the thighs with them. "Give him a break, you two," said Solstice, laughing, collecting them with a hug and messing up their hair. Both Kitty and Ivan wore tuxedos, had their black hair short, and wore a hint of dark eye makeup. "Your brother has a big day today. He's giving the opening remarks for the charity event." Ares had thrown himself on the couch and was mouthing the words on his datapad as he read them. Morgana's own heart was thudding in her chest for him. "No way I'm ever doing that shit," said Ivan, dancing like a monkey before Ares while scratching his armpits. "Language, Ivan," said Solstice, putting her fists on her hips. "This is an important day and both Mom and Dad are busy. Let's try to help them out." "They're always busy," whined Ivan as he let his head bobble around on his neck. Kitty climbed onto the top of the couch, perching like her nickname, her mouth moving silently as she read over Ares' shoulder. Morgana had moved near the open door between the two rooms, pretending to examine a poster from the latest play, Semyon Simple, about a fool with magical abilities, and how they bumbled their way through the halls. "Don't care about prior obligations. If I'm calling a damn board meeting, I expect everyone there, so piss off about this hard luck case. I'm standing in the Orpheum, about to hand over a 6-figure check, so I'm well acquainted with charity." A pause as he grunted. "I don't care if they love me. Love is temporary, fear is forever. Make it hurt." Victor glanced up, catching her listening, and strode to the door, managing a fake smile before slamming the door shut, leaving him alone in the opposite room. Solstice was glaring at her when she turned around. "You can't be that obvious, Bug. What was he talking about?" "Best not to worry about it." Morgana raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms. You're worrying about it. Solstice put her hands on her shoulders, then cocked a smile. When did you get as tall as me? Anyway. She crossed her arms. I'm the oldest and know best. Trust me, he still loves you, and if you stay out of his way, it'll stay that way. Vic still loves you. Solstice looked away before returning her gaze. Of course he does. He's not that bad, said Morgana. The pitying look her sister gave her made her stomach clench. You're just too young to know. You'll understand when you get older. He's just that way to protect us, she said when Solstice shook her head. Watch the twins for me, Bug. Her eldest sister checked back to see her mother faced away before scooting to the door, placing her ear against it. The twins were huddled in the corner playing Five Elements, while Aries looked like he was going to sweat through his tuxedo studying his speech. Morgana stared at Solstice, trying to imagine herself at that age, about to test for the halls. What would it be like to use magic for real? Sure, she'd played with the 5 elements, even though it was dangerous to tempt phase madness, but every kid with a lick of ability did. It wasn't dangerous in small amounts. Everyone always said they looked alike, except her big sis had dark hair like their mother, and a slightly crooked nose that she'd acquired a few years ago and refused to have fixed no matter how much Monique begged. Where's Andromeda? She asked. When no one else answered, Aries glared at the twins and then said, she was playing in the front area with the nanny. The event wasn't to start for another hour. Everyone in the room was busy. I'm going to check on her. Come throw with us, said Ivan with a flickering flame in his palm and victory in his expression, while Kitty crossed her arms and sulked. I always beat you. I'm getting better. Maybe later. Morgana ducked out of the room, catching the furtive downward glance from the door guard as she went by, which was happening more these days. The hallways teemed with people wearing earpieces, carrying equipment. She dodged through them, using the side door to exit into the lobby area of the theater. Men and women in their fanciest attire chatted in clusters, holding flutes of pale golden liquid, while waiters moved through the crowd holding trays. As she searched through the assembled, twice, she had to refuse a glass from a waiter. Then, standing near a statue of Frank Orpheum, patron of the Dramatics Hall, she found a hand sliding along her lower back. Hey gorgeous, why don't I know your name? A handsome gentleman sidled up next to her with a lecherous grin. It's Charmer and I'm 13, she said. The guy couldn't get away from her fast enough, apologizing and disappearing into the crowd. She wouldn't be surprised if he left the event completely. The charity would probably receive twice as large a gift from him, whoever he was, to assuage his guilt. She was aware that with a word to her father, she could ruin him. Morgana didn't like the way that made her feel. Like carrying a loaded gun that had no safety. Andromeda wasn't by the fountain, but following the flat-lipped huffs and annoyed eye rolls, she found her youngest sister perched on a railing near the photo station, making weird faces at the people trying to have their picture taken. She'd arrived in a simple frilly blue dress, but after escaping from their parents' disapproving eye, had slipped on a set of gauzy pink wings and applied a gaudy amount of makeup. The nanny stood nearby, looking near to tears as she pleaded with Andromeda to stop antagonizing the guests. Hey android, come hang with me. The nanny gave her a look of quiet relief when Andromeda leapt off the railing and hugged her side. This place is so boring, said Andromeda. And I'm thirsty. All they have is that awful tasting bubbly drink. Sec. Morgana spotted a waiter and waved him over. I need 2 orange juices, nothing added. The guy furrowed his forehead and started to protest, until a grey-haired woman Morgana recognized from her mother's charity events touched him on the shoulder and whispered. He hurried away, glancing back twice as if she were a 2-headed lion. The old woman winked, before returning to her circle of diamond-encrusted friends. Why did they make me come? I liked it better when I got to stay home and torment Ozanka, said Andromeda, sulking as she leaned against a wall, crushing her pink wings. The two of them were only 2.5 years apart, but their physical differences were enormous. "Besides saving that poor woman from you, these events are a chance for the world to get to know you," said Morgana. "The world? The world as far as we're concerned. I don't want the world to know me. It sucks." The waiter appeared with the 2 champagne glasses of orange juice, mumbled an apology, and disappeared before she could respond. I know. They sipped their drinks in silence. Andromeda brooded over not being able to run roughshod over the party, causing havoc in her wake, and Morgana couldn't help but stare into her future, which was a cliff she was about to throw herself off. Next year was St. Jude's prep, which meant she'd be almost in the 100 halls. The thought made her blood race. The world was becoming overwhelming, fast. As she placed the glass to her lips, another guy in a tux passed, running his eyes over her without an ounce of shame. She was having to deal with it more and more, helping her understand why Solstice kept her crooked nose. Anything to keep those gross old men away. Then she remembered Solstice's stories about St. Jude's. The boys there were worse. At least these were too old to make serious attempts. "Can I go play at the fountain?" asked Andromeda with a dollop of orange juice on her chin. Morgana wiped it off with her thumb. "Yes, but listen to her," she said, nodding to the nanny. "No further than the fountain, and be back at our private room in a half-hour. We'll need to clean you up before the event." Andromeda disappeared like a ghost, the anxious nanny hurrying after. Morgana eyed the exit before anyone else approached, and turning found a familiar girl around her age standing and staring. "Oh, I didn't see you there." The girl had a soft halo of curling black hair framing mellow brown skin that glowed like autumn. "Hey Morgana. Do you remember me?" The girl looked like she was going to implode from nervousness. Blake Holston." The name floated up from the past. "Yeah, it's been a while. My parents moved us to Paris for a few years," said Blake with an exasperated smile as if that was an awful punishment. "Sounds amazing." "Oh, it was, but you know," said Blake, glancing at her low heels. "I missed a lot here." "You missed pimples and awkward requests for handjobs from the idiots in our class." "Which ones?" "Practically all of them." Blake stared at her shoes. "I love your heels. Those make my feet hurt." "You get used to it," said Morgana, even though she hadn't yet. The arches and sides of her feet felt like they were being put through a vice, but Monique said they were expected, and she'd learned to deal with the pain, which seemed to be a lot of becoming an adult. "I'll be at St. Jude's," said Blake expectantly. "Yeah, I'll see you there, of course." Blake cleared her throat. "I was hoping, or do you want to hang out this summer? I know there's not much time left." "I'm sorry," said Morgana with a sigh. "We're headed to Prague next week, something about Vic's old friends or a cousin or something." "Vic? Oh yeah, sorry. My dad. We call him Vic." As she said it, Morgana realized how stupid it sounded. No one their age called their parents by their names except them. "Anyway, I need to get back to, you know." "Bye," said Blake with an energetic wave and hope in her eyes. "See you soon." Morgana strode away. Blake was nice. She remembered her from summer parties, playing 5 Elements. She hoped she wasn't too nice. Things had gotten weird at school. Unsteady ground. Solstice had warned her that this would happen. Said it was worse for them than regular people, because of the expectations of society and their parents' businesses. Sometimes it twisted people, made them something they didn't intend to be. She had no plans on letting that happen. There wasn't any reason, especially with her social standing, that she couldn't impose some order on her friends. The twins, led by Monique in her exquisite black dress, made their way into the lobby. Her younger siblings looked like they were plotting an escape, but their mother had them by the shoulders. She'd probably dragged them from the dressing room to give Aries a chance to prepare. Kitty caught her eye, making a silent plea for help, but Morgana gave her a big grin and slipped behind a circle of men in tuxedos discussing some sporting event they'd all recently seen. Her badge let her into the backstage area, and she wound through the passages until she saw Stefan. The look of consternation on his face clued her into something happening inside. He was surprised by her appearance and moved too slow to open the door. Inside, she found Aries crouched over his datapad, tears streaming down his face as muffled shouts from the other room echoed against the door. His face dripped with pain, lips snarled into a knot. Solstice and Victor were arguing. Loudly. Shouts. She hurried to the door. I saw there. Solstice was speaking, but it was hard to hear. They're not right. You don't know what the hell you saw. Victor's baritone went right through the door. Broken hells, you're a child. You don't know what you're talking about. Not even in the halls, and yet here you are, thinking you understand this world. Well, you don't, you idealistic fool. I'm not a fool and I know what I saw. It sounded like Solstice had moved. Next year, I'll be in Arcanium. You won't have control over me then. The hell I won't. I need you, Solstice. You have to understand that. It's too important. His voice dropped, menacing. And if you won't like the consequences. I don't love you anymore. I don't need your love. The door burst open. Morgana barely got out of the way. She took one look at her, and then Aries. Solstice's face was blotchy and her makeup smeared. Don't, she said, then stepped outside. Morgana could hear her asking Stefan about another way out of the theater. Through the open door, Victor glared, squinting with thought. I don't know what you heard. I just got here, she said right away. He lifted his chin, smoothed the hairs on his graying goatee. Good. Was anyone else in the room? On the couch, out of their father's sight, Aries clamped his hand over his mouth. No, she told her father. You should head into the party, he said grimly. I have more calls to make. Morgana pushed the door closed, being careful not to let it make too big a sound. She nodded to Aries and grabbed his hand on the way out. He sniffled the whole way down the hallway. She found them a cubby where the backstage workers wouldn't yell at them for being in the way. What happened? Aries held the datapad to his chest, eyes rimmed red, and looked away. There was a lot of screaming. They both said things. What things? I don't want to say. Fear was in his eyes. She knew the feeling. Fear of Vic. Fear of their father. How many times had they overheard him destroy one of his associates over a minor mistake? How many times had they seen him fire a servant for dropping a napkin, or leaving the tiniest smudge on a window? I can keep a secret. Aries shook his head. Despite his size and being a year older, she couldn't help but see him as a little kid holding a teddy bear for comfort after having a nightmare. No. If I say it, then it'll be harder for me to forget. Aries. His eyes flashed up hard and mean. No, and stop asking me. Fine. She held her hands out, taking a step back. Aries pulled the datapad away from his chest and stared at it like a venomous snake. I don't want to speak in front of everyone. Not now. A worker passing the cubby leaned in to say something, but then must have recognized them because they tidied their expression and hurried away. Probably thought they were just a couple of kids hiding out or smoking or something. They weren't adults, but they weren't kids either. They were in some awful purgatory where no one could explain how they were supposed to feel. I can do it for you if you want, she told him. Aries screwed up his face and slapped the datapad against his chest. You're not taking my place. It's my honor. I'm doing it. It's okay, Aries. I was just offering. You're my brother. I want to help, she told him. He seemed to accept the half apology. He stared into the rigging and ropes that surrounded them for a long time. Marion offered to be my first. She didn't know what he was talking about, but when she noticed his blushing, understanding came in a rush. So much riding on the day, and he was worried about his first time. especially when the look on his face wasn't pride but terror. He'd attended the winter dance last year at St. Jude's with Marion, and they'd been seen hanging around during social gatherings. That's great. What if I'm terrible at it? He asked. I figure everyone is at first, she said with a shrug. I can't be bad at it. She screwed up her face. I don't think you get a choice. It's like anything we do for the first time. No, that's not true. You know what Vic expects, an exemplary time at St. Jude's with extra cram sessions for the trials, getting into the halls on our first try, into the hall he wants us to be in, then one of the societies, top honors, the respect of our professors, our choice of fifth-year mentor, head of our society in our 5th year. I don't know if I can. It's too much. Morgana almost pointed out to him that it was even worse for girls, both from experience and what Solstice had told her, but she didn't want to ruin the moment with her self-pity. I know. It sucks. Vic asks a lot, but I guess it comes with a lot of perks. Better than being poor. Yeah, he said, frowning. What a shit life those suckers have. I'm glad I'm a charmer, but you know. I know. Do you really think Solstice will choose Arcanium? He asked. I don't know, she said. That'll piss him off if she doesn't go into Alchemists as he wants. Do you still want Protectors? He nodded. It'd be awesome if I got in there, and you got in Coterie. He bunched up his mouth. We should go. Ares lifted the datapad to indicate the approach of the event. Morgana checked around her. Damn, I left my purse in the room. I'll meet you at the table. You sure? In and out in a flash. Her demure smile faded as Ares disappeared into the passages. It reminded Morgana that their time as children was at an end. She tugged on her dress, which had bunched up around her hips. Lost in thought, she got turned around in the confusing passages and ran into a younger man in a tuxedo, probably his late 20s, but she couldn't tell. She tried to dodge him, but he moved with her, blocking her path. Hey, he said, eyes twinkling. I haven't seen you before. Great. I need to get to my table. She tried a second time to dodge around him, unsuccessfully. I just want to talk. And I want to leave. His jaw tightened. Most women are happy to talk to me. I'm a successful graduate of the halls. And I'm 13. He smirked. You don't look it. My name is Morgana Charmer. Look me up. The Herald had a front page about my family a few years ago. She was very aware that she'd gotten lost in a dead end, and hadn't seen any workers come this way. He had her trapped and was in complete control of her fate, but she knew she couldn't show fear. Morgana kept her lips squeezed flat and tried to show as much resolve as she could muster. Oh yeah, Victor Charmer. Shame he's not magical. His days are numbered. The guy winked. Look me up when you get old enough. He moved out of the way. Morgana tried to slide around, but he head faked and she stuttered to a stop. Just messing with you. Go on, get out of here. He let her pass, and she hurried to get away, navigating back to the former dressing room. When she neared, Morgana paused in the hallway to collect herself. Her pulse was racing and her hands shaking. The encounter could have gone much worse. Much, much worse. She should have felt lucky that he hadn't pushed it further, but she didn't. She felt powerless. Is that what things were going to be like now? When she'd collected herself, Morgana returned to the room and found her purse on the table. She was preparing to leave when her father came out of the back room. Mori, he said, eyes glinting with thought. I was just going to come look for you. You were? I don't think your brother is up to the task tonight. That flop sweat is unseemly, and I heard him stuttering over some of the words. This is supposed to be a celebration, not a funeral. I'd like you to take his place. You're a natural in front of a crowd. I know you won't have any problems, he said. I'd rather not, said Morgana. He really wants to do this. To make you proud. Now is not the time for pride. I ask these things because I'm positioning you each for greater responsibilities. The world we exist in requires a delicate dance. I want you to take his place. Aries will hate me. You need to get over wanting everyone to love you. It'll make you weak. Let them fear you instead. Morgana glanced to the door in remembrance of the guy that had trapped her in the hallway. He hadn't feared her until she'd brought up her name, and even then it could have gone the other way. Victor raised an eyebrow. You want me to help you get into the hall of your choice. I know you want coterie. I can make that happen, but you need to trust me and do what I say. He smiled, approached and put a hand on her shoulder. Think about it. Either way, Aries isn't going to be speaking. I'll take the podium if necessary, but here's a chance to show everyone who you are. Think about coterie. He left her swirling with thoughts. Aries would hate her if she took his place, but either way, he wasn't going to be speaking. It was hard to disagree with Victor's decision. If Aries screwed up the speech, it would damage him in the eyes of their social networks. She wound through the passages and found her way onto the theater floor, where the seats had been replaced with tables exquisitely set with white silk cloths, while floating balls of warm light hovered over the whole scene. Men and women filtered in from the front, taking their assigned seats for the event. The charmers, of course, were at a front table where the patrons, the mayor of the city, governors, and other personages of government were placed. Morgana took her spot next to Aries, who was still studying the datapad, reading the speech that he didn't even have to memorize. She suddenly felt sorry for him, but then that emotion was threaded with something rawer, more primal. With Solstice and Victor feuding and Aries not up to snuff, she had the opportunity to take first position in her father's eyes. The surge of emotion made her almost giddy. What are you smiling at? Asked Andromeda from her right. Morgana leaned over and touched her sister on the nose. A troublemaker. Victor claimed his seat at the table, the spot next to Aries on the other side. He leaned into his ear, and as he spoke, Aries' expression drained away. The event was coming to a head. A chime announced everyone should be in their seats. But I have to do it, said Aries a little too loudly. Victor let a predator's grin rise, then nodded to Morgana. Your sister is going to do it. Right, Mori? The eyes of the table speared her to the chair. She hadn't completely decided, but there was no more time left. Mori, what's your decision? The world dialed in around her. It was like looking through a keyhole. She rubbed her sweaty hands on her shimmering skirt beneath the table. Aries would hate her, but maybe that was his problem, not hers. As her father said, love is temporary, but fear is forever. There'd be a lot fewer incidents with creepy old men if they had a healthy respect for her, maybe even fear, instead of seeing her as a prize to be won or stolen. I will speak. The betrayal in Aries' eyes sunk her heart, but she kept up a brave face. He started to grab the datapad and make a run for it, but Victor snatched it away, quick as a snake. Eyes red, lips to a point, Aries burst away from the table, sobbing as he went, much to the delight of the other guests along his path. Victor's blank expression was one to be feared. She hoped Aries wouldn't get it too bad later, but it was coming. Victor turned to her, offered the datapad. This is yours. Make me proud, Mori. She rose to her feet, feeling the weight of expectations upon her. The walk to the stairs and onto the stage felt like 1,000 miles. She took to the podium, opening up the speech, which for a brief moment flickered as if it were going to fail. As she looked out upon the sea of tables, she saw heads of state, patrons, and the pillars of the business community. More importantly, she saw opportunity. The nervousness that had plagued her on the way up washed away. This was her moment, an introduction to a world that she might one day master. Morgana smiled comfortably, receiving similar reactions in return. She felt their anticipation and expectations and rose to meet them. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. and welcome to the annual Bastille charity event. This has been Fear is Forever by Thomas K. Carpenter.